In particular, we're also going to talk about the different restoration branches, different restoration movements in churches that have resulted after Joseph Smith's death, most of them after Joseph Smith's death, so that we can understand them. Then we'll look at the succession, how the succession works in the church today, and the succession to Brigham Young leading the church west. We have a lot to cover in this video, and I hope to do it well. I want to kick off, though, with a little personal story. I one time was asked to go speak at a conference out in the Midwest. It was a Book of Mormon conference in Missouri, and it was a great experience. It was not only for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, hyphenated. It was also for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, capital D, no hyphen. It was also for members of the Community of Christ and the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ, which sometimes are seen as the same but can also be different. It was also for people who were part of other restoration branches and movements, people who are known as Bickertonites or Hedrickites, sometimes Whiteites or others. Now, I don't say those pejoratively because one of the things that was fun was while I was at this conference, somebody said to me, "Who are you?" And I introduced myself, and they said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "I'm from Brigham Young University," or "I'm from Utah." And they said, "Oh, you're a mountain saint." And I kind of smiled, and I said, "I've never been called a mountain saint before." And they said, "Oh, yeah, that's what we call everybody who went west and followed Brigham, or mountain saints." And they said, we're called prairie saints. We're the Midwest saints who didn't go west. And then they said, "Sometimes we call you Brighamites." Kind of like how that person over there is a Josephite who followed Joseph Smith III, or this person is a Bickertonite or a Whiteite. And it was just so fun. It was so fun to talk and be with those. And I want to say up front in this video, I'm so grateful for what sometimes is collectively called our cousins in the Restoration, people who believe in the prophetic mission of Joseph Smith and in the divine mission of our Savior, Jesus Christ, even though we might belong to different Restoration churches. And for those who are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, hyphenated lowercase d, because that's different than the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, no hyphen, capital D, that are sometimes called Strangites. Sometimes we can, this might be an area where we need to do better. I'm even saying that of myself. If I could share a personal experience, I one time was in Nauvoo and talking with a member of the Community of Christ, and was kind of having some difficult feelings. As you know, sometimes like strangers are easy to get along with because you're so different, but it's your cousins or your family members who you share the same DNA that sometimes you have the hardest feelings towards because you come from the same source, yet you see things so differently. And as I was having some of these difficult feelings that arise in me, I felt the Holy Ghost rebuke me, if I can be honest. And the rebuke that I felt was that the Spirit said to me, "How many people on this earth," the Spirit led me through some questions like this in my mind, "how many people on this earth believe in God?" And I thought, well, the great majority do. And then the next question that came to my mind was, "How many people on this earth believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God?" And I said, "Billions." And then here was the next question. "How many people on this earth believe that Joseph Smith is Jesus Christ's servant in the latter days and the prophet of the Restoration?" And I was like, very few, 1%, maybe 1/10 of 1% of the global population. And then the Spirit kind of softened me and said, "This person you're talking to is part of the people who believe that Joseph is his prophet, that the Book of Mormon's true, that Jesus is the Christ, and that God our Father is our Father in heaven." And I saw that person, instead of being in conflict with them, more as my brother in the Restoration. I hope we can feel that way up front as I talk about different Restoration branches that exist out in the church today. But I do also want to pose a question in particular for members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And that is that I don't actually believe, sometimes we use this logic that if you will read the Book of Mormon and know that the Book of Mormon's true, then we follow down some logic. You will know that, therefore, Jesus is the Christ, that Joseph Smith was his prophet, and that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is true. I believe those first two steps in the logical syllogism, but not the third, simply because I could show you 1 million people in these various Restoration branches who don't belong to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But they still believe the Book of Mormon is true and that Joseph Smith was a prophet and that Jesus is the Christ. Well, the other thing I want to touch on in this video are some of these other people who chose not to follow Brigham and the 12 West. I'd highly recommend this book. It's called Scattering of the Saints, Schism Within Mormonism. And you can see this graphic here. This is trying to represent, when this book was written, all the different breakoffs of the church and where they broke off and how they broke off. There's so many, and I don't have time to give a quick summary. I do want to hit a few of them, though, and this graphic helps a little bit so you can see. Some of the breakoffs from the church, obviously the blue line is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints with Brigham Young that represents us and me. There is a breakoff from us, a primary breakoff that sometimes is known as fundamentalism, which is when our church decided at the turn of the century in the 1900s to quit the practice of plural marriage. And sometimes those are called FLDS, or Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints, who believe as a premise that plural marriage never should have ceased in the church, and that Wilford Woodruff in particular and Joseph F. Smith were wrong to stop it in the church. We'll look at a few of these other. James Strang, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, no hyphen. He's the one who claimed to have a letter saying that Joseph had appointed him, had he died, to be the new leader of the church. And James Strang's very charismatic, and his life is fascinating if you want to read into him. He's going to take a group of people over to Michigan, onto Beaver Island eventually, and build up a large following of about 10,000 people there. However, he will be martyred and killed by some disgruntled followers, and his movement has mostly faded away. There's not very many Strangites or followers of James Strang left today. There's also, if you look at the green line, there's Granville Hedrick, who in essence breaks off from the Prairie Saints, who don't follow Brigham West. And Granville Hedrick receives a revelation that he feels like the church should be taken back to Independence, Missouri. And so they go back, and if you go to Independence, Missouri today, you'll see a little white building on the temple lot. And those are sometimes called Hedrickites, or their official name is the Church of Christ Temple Lot. The orange you see is Sidney Rigdon, who did lead his own church up into Pittsburgh. And Sidney Rigdon's church kind of came to an end, but there was a breakoff of Sidney Rigdon's church that continues today, the Church of Jesus Christ. Sometimes they're called Bickertonites because they were led by a man named William Bickerton. And there are many others, and I apologize that I'm not touching on all of them, but I want you to understand these main ones that are out there. The main one that the other largest restoration movement is the Community of Christ, or the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The reorganization really are from saints who didn't go west and didn't go follow Lyman Wight. I didn't even talk about him, who went down to Texas. But they kind of stayed in the Midwest, in Illinois and other places. And in the 1840s, they just kind of convalesced more. Emma Smith is part of them. She does not follow Brigham and the 12 West. I'll talk about her in a second. But in the 1850s, they say we should reorganize. We should regather. We should regroup. And two men, Jason Briggs and Zenas Gurley, are usually the ones credited with beginning the reorganization. Usually around 1852 is the year. They reach out to Emma Smith and invite her to be part of it, and especially her son, Joseph III, who they feel Joseph Smith's son should be the rightful leader of the church. And then at a conference in Amboy, Illinois on April 6, 1860, the reorganization unanimously accepts Joseph Smith's oldest son, Joseph III, as their prophet, seer, and revelator, and the successor to the church. Today, the Community of Christ is an international church that has a few 100,000 members, and their mission is, quote, to proclaim Jesus Christ and promote communities of joy, hope, love, and peace, end of quote. They are wonderful caretakers of so many things that we believe are valuable as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They've been wonderful caretakers and stewards of the Kirtland Temple, of the manuscript of the Joseph Smith translation, of the Mansion House, and so many others, so many things. We're so grateful to the Community of Christ, our brothers and sisters in the restoration there. And Emma Smith ends up affiliating with the Community of Christ, or what's called the Reorganized Church at the time, later known today as the Community of Christ. This is a good summary of Emma because a lot of people have questions about her, and I can't give a full summary of Emma Smith. I'd recommend Jennifer Reeder's new book, called First, The Life and Faith of Emma Smith, if you want more expansive. But I do like this summary from Richard Bushman on Emma Smith in his book, Rough Stone Rolling. He says, quote, Emma's alienation from the main body of the church began almost immediately after the martyrdom. Joseph left behind 5 children. Emma thought immediately of her family's security. At issue was property. She wanted to preserve her assets from inclusion with the churches, a nearly impossible distinction to maintain. William Clayton felt she was grasping and unreasonable, and Brigham Young was suspicious. Uneasy in dealing with the powerful, willful woman, they left her out of their councils and even their socials. Her known opposition to plural marriage made her double troublesome. When most of the saints moved west, she stayed behind in Nauvoo. With Joseph gone from her life, Emma withdrew from religion. She was reluctant to talk about Mormonism. Eventually, the Reformed Mormons who ran the reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, made up of saints who had not gone west, persuaded Joseph III to take the leadership. Emma joined but never took a leading role. I think it's important to say that Emma Smith was faithful to her testimony of Joseph Smith, his prophetic calling, the Book of Mormon, and the Restoration, her entire life, even though she admittedly didn't follow Brigham, didn't believe in Brigham as in his prophetic ministry either, and that they had problems with each other. But it's important to know that Emma Smith was faithful to what she believed was true and held true in particular to her testimony of the Book of Mormon and the Restoration as a whole.